Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Two crimson lines slashed across the white plastic stick, effectively ending the life Julian Vane had painstakingly built for the last 3 years. The bathroom of the high-rise corporate office was silent, save for the terrifyingly loud thrum of his own heart, which battered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He stared at the pregnancy test, his vision swimming with a nausea that had nothing to do with the morning sickness roiling in his gut, and everything to do with the sheer, unadulterated terror of the man sitting in the glass office just 20 feet away. Julian dropped the test into the bin, burying it beneath a mountain of paper towels, his hands trembling so violently he could barely clasp his belt. He had broken the one cardinal rule, the single commandment etched in stone between him and Damon Cross. Asterisk, no attachments. No consequences. No future. Asterisk. Julian splashed freezing water onto his face, staring at his reflection. The pale skin, the violet shadows under his eyes, the slight, terrified parting of his lips. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. He wasn't just an employee. He was Damon's chief architect, his right hand. And for the last year, the warm body in the Alpha's bed whenever the stress of running a multi-billion-dollar empire became too much to bear. Julian. The voice came from the intercom, deep, resonant, and laced with that particular alpha timbre that made Julian's knees weak even now, in the midst of his panic. Get in here. The structural reports for the Zenith project are due. Julian took a breath that rattled in his chest. He had to go in there. He had to look Damon in the eye. And he had to maintain the lie that was now growing inside him. Damon Cross was not a man. He was a force of nature wrapped in Italian wool. Sitting behind a desk carved from a single slab of obsidian, the Alpha exuded a scent of crushed pine and ozone, a smell that signaled an approaching storm. He didn't look up when Julian entered, his focus entirely on the holographic schematics floating above his desk. "You're late," Damon said, his voice flat. "You're never late." Indigestion, Julian lied, the word tasting like ash. He moved to the side of the desk, placing his tablet down. He kept his distance. Lately, his own scent, usually a muted, soft rain smell, had been spiking with the sweet, milky undercurrent of early pregnancy. He had drowned himself in scent blockers this morning, enough to make his skin itch, but with an alpha of Damon's caliber, one could never be too careful. Damon finally looked up. His eyes were the color of steel, sharp and calculating. They raked over Julian, analyzing him with the same cold precision he used to evaluate skyscrapers. "You look pale." "I'm fine, sir." "Sir," Damon repeated, a dry, humorless smirk touching his lips. He leaned back, the leather of his chair creaking. "Last night, when you were screaming my name into my pillow, it wasn't served." Julian flushed, a heat rising up his neck that had nothing to do with arousal and everything to do with shame. "We are at work, Damon. And whose fault is that? You're the one who insisted on coming in despite looking like you're about to faint." Damon stood up. He was massive, towering over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that seemed to block out the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows. He walked around the desk, closing the distance between them. Julian instinctively took a step back, his hand fluttering subconsciously toward his stomach before he forced it down to his side. Damon stopped, his eyes narrowing. He sniffed the air, a subtle flare of his nostrils. "You're wearing too much neutralizer. It smells like a chemical factory in here. I told you, I'm not feeling well." "I didn't want to offend your senses." Damon hummed, a low vibration that Julian felt in his bones. The Alpha reached out, his large, warm hand cupping Julian's jaw, tilting his head up. It was a possessive gesture, one that blurred the lines they had supposedly drawn. "You never offend me, Julian. That's why you're still here. That, and the fact that you're the only person who doesn't bore me." He leaned in, his lips brushing the shell of Julian's ear. "Are you still taking the suppressants? Your cycle is due next week. I don't want a repeat of last month." Julian's heart stopped. Last month. The accident. It had been a perfect storm. They were in Tokyo for a merger. The stress had triggered Julian's heat early, an erratic, violent heat that no amount of standard blockers could mitigate. Damon had been there. Damon, with his unparalleled control, had snapped the moment the scent of distressed Omega hit him. They had spent 3 days locked in the penthouse suite. It was primal, hazy, and devoid of protection because Julian had assured him, breathless and desperate, "It's fine. I'm on the pill. I'm safe. Yes," Julian whispered, the lies slipping out with practiced ease, though it felt like swallowing glass. "I'm taking them." Damon pulled back, searching Julian's face for a second longer than comfortable, before nodding. "Good. Because the board is watching. I can't have my chief architect distracted by biology. We have an empire to expand." "Of course," Julian managed. "No strings. No distractions." "Exactly." Damon returned to his seat, effectively dismissing him. "Go home, Julian. Rest. I need you sharp for tomorrow." Julian turned and walked out, his legs feeling like lead. He made it to the elevator before the tears finally fell. He wasn't just distracted by biology. He was trapped by it. 3 weeks passed. The deception became a noose, tightening with every morning Julian spent retching into his toilet, with every layer of scent-blocking patches he applied to his scent glands. He avoided Damon's bed, citing workload, illness, or exhaustion. Damon, surprisingly, allowed it. But the air in the office grew colder. The alpha was becoming restless, his temper fraying at the edges during meetings. He sensed the distance Julian was placing between them, and like a predator denied its usual territory, he was getting agitated. The breaking point came during the gala for the Zenith Project's groundbreaking. The ballroom was suffocating, filled with the elite of the city, the air thick with the cloying perfumes of omegas and the aggressive pheromones of posturing alphas. Julian stood near the back, clutching a glass of sparkling water, trying to steady the dizziness that had been plaguing him all evening. He looked across the room. Damon was holding court, looking devastating in a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He was talking to a young, beautiful Omega from a rival real estate family. The Omega was laughing, touching Damon's arm. Jealousy, sharp and irrational, spiked in Julian's chest. It was followed immediately by a wave of nausea, so potent the room spun. "Julian." He turned to see Marcus, the company's beta HR director and Julian's only confidant, looking at him with concern. "You look like you're going to pass out." "I need air," Julian gasped. He stumbled toward the terrace doors, pushing them open and stumbling out into the cool night air. He made it to the stone railing, gripping it as he dry heaved, his body trembling. "Julian." The voice was ice cold. Julian froze. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and turned slowly. Damon was standing in the doorway, the light from the ballroom framing his silhouette. He wasn't alone. The young Omega was standing behind him, looking curious. "Go back inside," Damon said to the Omega, not taking his eyes off Julian. "But Damon." "Go." The command in his voice was absolute. The Omega scurried away. Damon stepped onto the terrace, the heavy door clicking shut behind him, sealing them in silence. The wind whipped at Julian's hair, carrying his scent, his true scent, directly to Damon. The sweat, the panic, had caused the blockers to peel away. Damon stopped 5 feet away. He inhaled deeply, his body going rigid. His eyes, usually cool steel, flashed with a terrifying amber light. "Milk," Damon said, the word a growl. "And new life." Julian backed up against the stone railing, nowhere left to run. "Damon, please. You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I can explain." Damon crossed the distance in a blur of motion, slamming his hands onto the railing on either side of Julian, trapping him. "Explain? What is there to explain? You told me you were on suppressants. You looked me in the eye, not 3 weeks ago, and lied to my face. I didn't think it would happen." Julian cried out, the tears finally spilling over. "You didn't think?" Damon laughed, a cruel, harsh sound. "You are the most calculated person I know, Julian. You don't make mistakes. You make plans." He leaned in, his face inches from Julian's, his pheromones rolling off him in waves of burnt pine and fury, an angry alpha trying to cow a disobedient mate. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? Or was this the plan all along? To trap across? I thought you were different. I thought you were the one person who didn't want me for my name or my bank account." "It wasn't a trap," Julian shouted back, finding a spark of courage in his desperation. "I lied about the suppressants because I'm sterile. Or I was supposed to be." Damon froze, the fury momentarily stalled by confusion. What? 5 years ago, Julian sobbed, his composure shattering. After the chemical leak at the old site, the doctors told me my reproductive system was ruined. Scar tissue. Dead nerves. They said I would never conceive. I stopped taking the pills because they made me sick, and what was the point? I was broken. Damon stared at him, his breathing heavy. I lied to you, Julian continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, because I didn't want your pity. I didn't want you to look at me like I was damaged goods. I wanted to be your equal. When you asked, I just said yes because it was easier than explaining that I was empty. Julian slid down the railing, collapsing into a crouch, burying his face in his hands. I didn't know. I swear. Damon, I didn't know I could still. That this could happen. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Julian waited for the explosion. He waited for Damon to fire him, to tell him to get an abortion, to throw him off the balcony. Instead, the suffocating pressure of the angry alpha pheromones began to recede, replaced by something complex, confusion, shock, and underneath it all, a strange, smoky scent of protectiveness. Get up, Damon said. His voice was no longer shouting, but it was still hard. Julian shook his head. Just fire me. I'll sign the NDA. I'll disappear. You won't have to deal with. I said get up. Damon reached down, gripping Julian's arm. He hauled him to his feet, but he didn't let go. His hand slid down to Julian's waist, holding him steady. You are an idiot, Damon muttered, his jaw tight. A brilliant architect, and a complete moron. Damon, you thought I would pity you? Damon looked at him, his expression intense. You thought I kept you around, in my bed and in my boardroom, because of your ability to breed? Do you think so little of me? You said no strings, Julian whispered. You said no future. I said that because everyone I have ever let close has tried to take something from me, Damon hissed. But you just gave me something I didn't even know existed. Damon's hand moved, hesitantly, tentatively, until it rested flat against Julian's stomach, over the silk of his dress shirt. The heat of his palm seeped through the fabric. Is it mine? Damon asked, though the scent alone was confirmation enough. I've never been with anyone else, Julian said softly. Not since the day I met you. Damon closed his eyes, exhaling a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. A miracle, he murmured, the word strange on his cynical tongue. You're telling me this is a medical impossibility? That's what Dr. Eris said. Then it seems, Damon opened his eyes, the steel melting into something molten and intense, that my seed is simply too strong to be denied by medical opinion. Julian let out a wet, choked laugh. You arrogant prick. Perhaps. Damon stepped closer, eliminating the space between them entirely. He wrapped his other arm around Julian's back, pulling him into the shelter of his body. But you lied to me, Julian. That requires punishment. Julian shivered, but the fear was gone, replaced by the familiar ache of desire. What kind of punishment? House arrest, Damon declared, his voice dropping an octave. My penthouse. You will move in tonight. You will be monitored. You will be fed, and you will not step foot in that office until I say so. I am not risking a miracle baby because you want to check load-bearing walls. That sounds like a dictatorship, Julian argued weakly, though he leaned into Damon's chest, inhaling the scent of pine that was now calm, steady, a forest after the storm. No, Damon corrected, pressing a kiss to Julian's temple, his lips lingering there. It's a partnership. The terms have changed. The contract is void. What's the new contract? Julian asked, looking up at him. Damon looked down, his gaze possessive, terrifying, and undeniably loving. Lifetime tenure. Exclusive rights. And co-parenting. Julian felt the tension drain from his body. You want it. I want everything that is yours, Julian, Damon said, his voice rough. I was just too much of a coward to admit it until I thought you were trying to run away. Damon pulled back slightly, his expression serious. But never lie to me again. If you're broken, tell me. I have enough gold to fix the cracks. That's what kintsugi is, isn't it? The broken piece becomes more valuable than the original. I promise, Julian whispered. Good. Damon swept him up into his arms, bridal style, ignoring Julian's gasp of surprise. Damon, put me down. People are watching. Let them watch, Damon growled, walking toward the terrace doors. He kicked them open, striding back into the ballroom with his pregnant Omega in his arms, silencing the crowd instantly. Let them see exactly who you belong to. As they walked through the stunned silence of the gala, Julian buried his face in Damon's neck. The fear of the future was gone, replaced by the beating of two hearts, one large and steady, one tiny and new, both protected by the wolf who had finally decided to guard his pack. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not with chains, but with a truth he was too afraid to speak. If you enjoyed seeing Damon lose his composure and take absolute control, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a partner who kept a pregnancy secret out of fear, or is a lie always a betrayal? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, Man 1. Damon Cross, tall alpha, sharp jawline, intense steel gray eyes, slicked back black hair, wearing expensive tuxedo, possessive expression, holding Man 2 in bridal carry. Man 2. Julian Vane, Omega, softer features, brown hair, slight blush, teary eyes, wearing white dress shirt and black trousers, head resting on Man 1's shoulder, hand protectively over stomach. Background is a luxurious ballroom balcony at night, city skyline bouquet, moonlight, dramatic lighting, emotional atmosphere, cinematic composition, intricate details.